Well, good evening and welcome to Environmental Coffee House. And hi, Jen.
Hi.
I am Sandy Schoelles, and we have a guest. Jack Adam Weber was with us. I don't know what happened, but I'm sure he will be back in a second and we will hook him up. So while I'm waiting, let's say hi to everybody. Raza and Gary, and hi, Kim, our wonderful mod, and Hunter Z, and Naz. Hi, Naz, and Hoops, Hoople's cat, and Void. Hi, Void. Human Love and Solidarity, and Robert Crane, Dee Dee, Rich, Diana, and here comes our guest, and let's see if I can get him where I wanted him. Well, I don't really want him under Jennifer Hynes. I kind of wanted him in the middle. Do you think I should play around and see if we could get him in the middle?
You can do it. Just one more change and he'll be
I'm
right in
going
the
to do it
middle between
one
us.
more time. There we
I don't want
go.
to be in
Hi,
the middle
Hi,
with you.
Grace.
Jack.
Welcome
You're in the
back.
middle. Jack is in the middle.
Hi.
Jack is in the house. Well, welcome, Jack Adam Weber. I hope that you enjoyed that. Jack didn't get to see the video start, but
Oh,
we
I saw
have.
some of it.
Okay, well, we've got everybody's joining us on Facebook and YouTube. And I want to start by saying that this is a beautiful book. It is beautifully written. Jack sent it to me. Yeah, we both have it up, right? And Jack sent it to me. Well, I mean, and he wrote, Dear Sandy, may this blossom you in good ways. I hope we talk again. And here we are finally with Jack. And usually, what I do, since I've been blabbing now for 5 minutes, is hand it over to Jennifer, who will then take up the reins from me. And let's go for it.
yeah. Hey, Jack, welcome to Environmental Coffee House. We're so excited to talk with you tonight. Guys, Jack is an author, a community organizer, an organic farmer, grower, a climate refugee, a beautiful soul all around. So, with that, Jack, welcome to Environmental Coffee House. So happy you're here.
Yes, finally,
Thanks for having
finally.
me. Can you see me okay? Is my
You're
video all right?
beautiful. You're beautiful.
You're
Okay,
just
We are
good.
great.
we are live,
You're just
and
great.
so Jack, whatever you'd like to say to start, we are thrilled to have you. We really are. That was such a beautiful book.
Thanks.
It's a touching book, and in these times, these terrible times we live in, sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes that's what you need.
Mhm.
So take it away,
So
Jack.
just from what I saw the video there, the loss was more recent. It was in 2018, and
Oh,
that
so
earthquake that I think was mentioned there was actually a 6.9 earthquake. Um, it
wow.
it shook me to my knees, and I was still hanging out at
Oh
my
my
farm,
goodness.
and while the sky was orange, up country for me, and every night I could go out and just sort of see the glow in the sky where the lava had already begun.
Oh my
And
God.
one day I was outside and on my lanai, that's what we call patios in Hawaii, and I was just working or writing or doing something, in this earthquake just shook me
It had to be
of a
scary.
situation, but you just like my second big earthquake. Anyway, my knees were shaking for like 10 minutes. I said, okay, that's it. I'm evacuating. So that earthquake got me evacuated. And then a few weeks later, everything disappeared.
Oh
Oh my
dear.
God. Well,
Yeah.
maybe we want to hear a little more about everything disappearing because this is what I think what really led you to the beautiful book.
Yeah, it actually was part of what led me to it. It sort of led me deeper into it. So the love experience, I say in the beginning of the book that I was in effect a climate refugee. And, I had this interview yesterday and they were asking me, well, was the lava due to climate
Mm-hmm.
change? And I said, well, I don't know. But in effect, that's what it was, right? It was an environmental catastrophe, not unlike a hurricane or a tornado. And I had already begun the book. This book was a 6-year project, so I had begun writing it already, and it was like, I don't know, kind of halfway in the carving of it, and it wasn't a linear progression. I sort of like began the book, in a really strange way. I wrote the whole book by accident, which I could share about. I don't know if that's interesting, but anyway, so
It's
the
all
lava
interesting,
happened. I
Jack.
lost everything. Yeah, like all that happened, and the, like the poignancy of that experience of losing everything, was an initiation in the sense that it was like, okay, like you're writing this book, you care about the climate crisis, so here we're going to kick your ass and put you through this and see what comes of that. So that event really changed a lot of the shape of the book, and stories came into the book from that experience.
Well, that's awesome. Jack, I have a quick question. Everybody in the
Mhm.
audience wants to know where you are sitting.
I'm sitting in my van. So I live
Oh,
out of my camper van, and I have the back
okay.
door a little bit open for some air.
All
And
right.
I'm in like on the edge of wilderness here, so that's where I'm sitting.
So you really are
So
the off gridder. You're the off gridder.
yeah, like I can strap in my seatbelt here, if needed. If this conversation gets rocky, I can just strap in.
Strap in, huh?
Oh,
Yeah,
God.
so like I ended up with nothing. Like after the lava flow, I lost all that, and I ended up like in Ojai, where I have family, and I'm grateful to be living on a beautiful piece of land where it's bloody quiet up here in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I sort of ended up in like a really simplified life, and I said, well, this is in alignment with our times. So I I'm sort of like out of the closet. I don't have a nice.
It's okay. It's perfect. We're gonna have uh, um, a little trouble with the connection, but just keep on going right through it. So you're living off grid, basically, but it as a result of what happened to you,
Yeah,
or
off
it's a
grid.
choice. And it's a
Yeah, it's
choice.
both. It's like yeah, it's definitely by choice, and a lot of people don't have a choice but to live like this, but I do, and I choose to do it mostly because of the quiet. I hate city noise, and I hate machine noise all the time. I think it's like part of the climate crisis. Actually, it makes people crazy.
I think it does somewhat. I think you're right about
Hmm.
that. Oh my gosh. So, Jen,
Yeah. So, Jack,
you
you've been
know,
through so many experiences over these last, when did this all start? 5 years ago. And it must be kind of like being a phoenix rising from the ashes, literally,
again.
right? Literally.
Mm-hmm.
And it must have changed you. And what were some of the takeaways from all this really rough climate refugee experience that you went through where you lost everything? I mean, your
Hmm.
farm in Hawaii, I think you worked on it for 18 years, right? Am I right on that?
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, just about that. It was a beautiful paradise, and that's a great question. And I think that the two takeaways that are coming to mind are one that's been with me ever since poignantly is like enjoy the process of what you do. So I built this farm from like the jungle up. It was just raw jungle and lava, and I sort of worked a lot by hand. I didn't use a lot of machines, and I built the soil, from the lava rock and ground cover, etc., and mulching. And and then I built this house. So the house was like the worst decision of my life, I think.
Oh,
So it just taxed me in so many ways. And anyone who's like tried to build a house by yourself, let alone like in the jungle, and I'm an artist to make beautiful things, and so I really got carried away on this house. So it wasn't a big house, but I made it beautiful, and I made it beautiful for Pele, who took it. But I
oh,
really did not enjoy building the house most of the time. I worked with horrible people, and I got ripped off all the time, and it was stressful, etc. And so like I didn't enjoy that process a lot of the
yeah.
time. But what I did enjoy was building the land, building the soil and the orchards and the gardens. And so like after losing everything, when I look back, it's like, wow, all that land work was a labor of love, right? And that housework was a bit of a labor of love and a bit neurotic as well. And so it's to learn to just be a bit less neurotic and to choose my passions more carefully. Um, and and another takeaway is just like keep it simple. And I think that's like one of the most important things I think that any of us can do today is to like minimalize our lives, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
and it's like that opens up so many opportunities to pay attention to what matters and to do what matters, right? The inner work and community work and to live a bit more freely outside the crazy system that we're in.
Yeah.
I am kind of doing it, although I live in the same place I've lived off. I'm not totally off grid, but I understand. I'm selling things. I'm doing the same thing. I'm just letting a lot of stuff go. I'm changing.
Yeah.
It's time. So when you got inspired for the book, I mean, you have some pretty interesting things in there, and it really feels good. But tell us about the inspiration part, like not just from the negatives that happened to you, but the positives.
The inspiration for what?
For the book, when you started it, what kept you going? What kept you inspired, even though
Oh God.
you were writing it for so many years, but then all of a sudden, this horrible these events happened to you. How did you keep
Hmm.
going?
Yeah, well, like that would get into some of the negatives. So, like on the positive side, the inspiration side, I think I'm always inspired. Like I'm never not inspired, and and so like I'm even inspired through crisis, and that's just kind of like that healing heart that's in me. So, I think what really inspired me to write the book was poetry actually. So I have this collection
Yes.
of poems that I had put together and I'll come full circle on that in a sec. But I
Hmm.
started to write an introduction to that collection of poems, which I was really
Oh, the joys of the internet.
Well, while we're waiting for Jack to come back, he's also a poet and I believe like a chiropractic Chinese healer as well.
Wow.
What's
Hey,
going
Jack,
on
just in
here?
case we lose you, just go back out and come back in. He doesn't know.
He has no idea.
No, this is the joys
just
of
kept
live.
getting longer.
Keep
He
going,
doesn't have a
Jack.
good internet connection.
Yeah, well, not all of us are lucky enough. Jack, I'm going to tell him to go back out and come back in if we lose him. I guess
Yeah.
I neglected to tell him that. But Mindy
Yeah.
asked, where is he? Mindy, he's in Ojai, California. OJ, yeah, Ojai.
Uh-huh.
Ojai.
OJAM.
Oh, Jack,
Yeah.
you're back. Okay, we lost you for a couple of minutes there.
Are we back?
Yeah,
What
it's
happened?
just if you do get
Okay, should
knocked
I like
off,
wait, which?
you're fine. But if you do get knocked off, you can always come back in through that same link. So we left off where you were telling us about
Okay,
the inspiration, and some of it was negative, some of it was positive, and then we kind of sort of lost you.
really? So you didn't? So none of the like writing of the introduction for the poetry, none of that came across.
That's right. Sorry.
Okay,
It's
that's
okay.
right.
The joys of
That's okay.
life. Everybody
Um,
gets it.
right. So I'll make it shorter and more concise. So the inspiration from the book came from a collection of poems that I had gotten together,
Yes.
which called Rebirth, right? Rebarth, which I'm just releasing right now, and 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 so I began to write an introduction to it, and it just got longer and longer and longer and longer. And 500 pages later, I had this manuscript, which is Climate Cure, and anyway, so that's what I mean when I wrote the book by accident. That it just like I didn't really intend to do that. So
So had
um
you started
yeah,
collecting
so that was
material
the
and
inspiration.
You had started kind of collecting different bodies of knowledge and material and sort of wove it into a book.
Yeah, kind of the material that's it was sort of already with me. I had been writing, articles regularly for like a decade, and and studying climate science, and so it just sort of flowed out of me, and I integrated it, and then I did more research, like I did more climate science research for what became the appendix, which is a really unique synthesis of the climate science.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's like part of the inspiration.
Well,
Yeah.
the book is beautiful.
Well, tell us
something.
Tell us something about the book. Speak to us about the, maybe the process of writing it, or how you transformed, or your favorite parts.
Well, I wrote the book at my leisure, and I went through some intense periods of writing it, and then I had to lay off of it because of different reasons. One was having a personal breakdown, another was working on the house, and just work responsibilities. So, I wrote the book passionately, but it was at my leisure. And when I finally submitted it to the publisher, like, I never thought I'd get a book deal, and I did. And then the publisher wanted me to rewrite the book in lots of different ways, and I was pretty not happy about that. And so I did that, and then they wanted me to change things all up again. So I worked for the publisher for like a year and a half to rewrite the book, and they really wanted me to cut out a lot of the hard-hitting stuff and a lot of the doomerism kind of stuff that really isn't doomerism, because I'm not a total doomer.
Yes.
And we should talk about that. But I had to really fight for what's in the book. So I fought for all of it. I was willing to lose the deal just to keep it honest. And I won that battle, and I'm glad I did. And they should be glad that they lost, because there's a lot of information in the book that's really important, and it's not a lot of flowery stuff, and that's why it's real, and it's heartfelt and authentic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that was some of the process.
Sandy, we can't hear you.
There's poetry in the book.
Yeah, there's some poetry
indeed.
in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So do you want me to answer what are some of my favorite parts of the book? I'm happy to just let you both speak.
Well,
why don't you speak about,
or just talk about whatever you want to. This is your time.
Yeah.
This is your time to talk.
Well, and then we can
have
you don't have to even
answers.
talk about the book. You could talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah. How about this? I'd like to talk about what both of you found interesting in the book, and maybe we can talk about that.
Well,
yeah.
Put you on the spot, Sandy. Yeah, I can share some of mine too, but it's let's put each other on the spot. I like that.
One of my favorite sayings, and I told Jennifer this early, it's way back though. This isn't in the emotional part, the helping part, but this is visiting the climate doctor. And you say about geoengineering, referring to the collection of technological inventions, but this is what I love. Depending on what substances are used, solar radiation could in effect pharmaceutically medicate our atmosphere, a kind of celestial chemotherapy. Wow. So that part, when you were talking, I'd like to go into where you're talking about, a little bit about the science behind your book. But I thought those were brilliant little statements right there. So are you with us? I'm not muted anymore.
I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, the last thing I heard was Sandy saying my favorite quote or whatever, and then the whole thing froze.
Oh, the solar radiation management. Sorry guys, we are doing our best.
We are.
But we really wanted to do this live, and I'm going to go do it again just so you can hear it. Depending on what substances are used, solar radiation management could, in effect, pharmaceutically medicate our atmosphere, a kind of celestial chemotherapy. Oh my gosh. I thought that was brilliant, and I thought, well, would you like to chat about the issues in the book you brought up about before we get into the touchy-feely?
Sure, whatever. What's touchy-feely is that you actually read that, because I'm not lying to you. This morning, I don't know why, but that line came to me in the book, and I've never thought about that line since writing it, except when I posted an article once about the geoengineering. But I think what came up this morning is I thought about that, and I was juxtaposing that to vaccination and what's happening. And it's like I was speaking to some of the people that I often speak to, like on Facebook and, through my professional channels. And I was thinking about vaccination. I said, listen, I don't even like that we have to get vaccinated. Okay. Like nobody necessarily wants to do that. And I realized how similar that is to the geoengineering thing. It's like nobody wants that we're going to maybe have to spray the sky to cool the planet down in an acute situation. And I just realized the parallel between those, but when you have a situation that's so extreme that, the majority of life on the planet, and with vaccinations, it's human life, is at stake, it's like you have to do what you have to do by the best means possible. And so that's just a thought that came up along those lines.
Do you think that's going to happen?
I would lean towards some variation of that. Of course, I don't know, but I lean towards, some variation of that happening. And now I think they can use calcium carbonate. I think that's the substance. So it won't be, quite so toxically chemotherapeutic. But, there's so many problems with the geoengineering thing. And I don't necessarily need to go down that rabbit hole.
Right.
But if you want to, we can.
No, we don't have to. I just basically wanted to read that quote that you wrote. It was part when I first read the book, the way you described it. Jen, do you have anything specific that you want to bring up?
Sure, we can talk about
unpack.
Right, sure. Why don't we talk about Chapter 5, Jack, mining and managing eco-anxiety? Yeah. And you open this with a quote from David Wallace Wells, which is kind of prescient, and I'm just going to go ahead and read it if you don't mind. Over the past decades, our culture has gone apocalyptic with zombie movies and Mad Max dystopia, perhaps the collective result of displaced climate anxiety. And you talk about climate anxiety and how it's kind of, it's a real thing. It's fear and anxiety of the climate. And I was wondering if you could delve into that a little bit, maybe talk about understanding climate anxiety. A lot of folks here have that, I'm sure, because we all know that the climate and the biosphere is in trouble. What to do when anxiety starts, and the problem with panic. Could you talk about some of these areas, please?
It's quite a list you just gave me, so you might have to remind me of some. I'll just begin by sort of defining climate anxiety. And climate anxiety has become a catch-all for like climate grief and the anxiety itself, climate stress. And so I think a good term, like for all the difficult climate emotions that we feel, is climate distress, right? But unfortunately, the media a lot is calling all these things climate anxiety, and it kind of sucks because each of these emotions are so important to themselves and require their own treatment and their own alchemy and their own working with them. So that's just a little logistical issue with the term climate anxiety. And the Wallace Wells quote I really appreciated, because I think it speaks a bit to the unconscious and how, we feel this sort of impending thing coming in the future. And it's really hard, for so many reasons that I discuss in the book, like our cognitive biases and why we can't even really grok the issue of the climate crisis in the future. Like, it's like this numinosity like coming towards us, and it's really hard to like imagine that that's happening on a beautiful sunny day in California, or a beautiful winter day in Minneapolis. But I think it lives in us, and it comes out in these different ways. And like, I think what's happened during the pandemic is it's really brought out sort of like the dysregulation of society in general, and Donald Trump didn't help any of that, right? And so we're kind of like in this massive sort of shadow revealing right now, where it's like all the shit's coming out of us, and it's really important to know how to work through that stuff. And people who have done inner work and been through crisis and like stayed through the crisis, and not turned to drugs and to distraction and whatever, but actually like stayed present, through the horror and the terror and the collapse, in small ways in their own life, I think are well prepared to, for dealing with the pandemic and the crisis itself. So I'm just kind of tying a few things together and bringing it a bit more present too with the pandemic, which to me is like the gateway to the climate crisis. I've called it that, especially because it's it's an environmental nature issue that's related to the climate crisis, in the sense that, how we've destroyed the natural world and how that's increased our exposure to what are they called, viruses, viruses in animals. So in terms of anxiety, it's like, like what to do about it. So there's so many tips in the book about what to do about anxiety. There's like tips with, there's a 3-step acute anxiety, protocol. And then there's like a 7-step, more embodied, sensational embody anxiety protocol. And then at the end, there's 22 anxiety tips like that I go into a bit, just to give people tips for how to deal with it.
Absolutely.
And like in a general overarching sense, I think having support, having community, having people we can talk to, not feeling alone, being in support groups, being in sharing circles, journaling, being in touch with our feelings, not letting everything build up inside of us so much, but being able to vent and have these things be talked about. It's like people don't really talk about the climate crisis very much, especially during the pandemic. So I think really just having support to go through it.
Now, you're kind of a community leader in different support groups, aren't you? Don't you have kind of Yes?
Yes, I was waiting for the end of your sentence.
I was finished.
Oh, so the question is what you mentioned, that I'm a community leader in with support groups, and you just wanted me to speak to that.
Yeah.
As you wish. I mean, this isn't, as you wish. Or you could speak about something else if you wish.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, after the lava, I created a grief group in Hawaii, and that was really awesome. And the place I evacuated to there was a farm up on the Hamakua coast, and there were like a dozen of us refugees up there, and we actually had a great time. And so I couldn't have been in a better net of relationship than being up there. And so I was super grateful for that. And that experience really gave me like a direct, visceral, full-on experience of what it's like to actually be supported through a crisis. And at that farm, I created a grief group where people and friends that I knew from the community that were losing, came out and talked and told their stories and cried and laughed. And that was wonderful. And then, one of the topics that I presented at one of our last grief groups is what are you called to do now? Like, what are you called to do moving forward? And what I said is that I'm called to create circles and to create support groups. And so when I came to Ojai, when I left Hawaii, that's what I did. I created a climate discussion and support group, and I founded XR, Extinction Rebellion, here. And so I've been, and there are lots of like cool people who care about stuff here. So those are, a couple group things that I've initiated here, and I continue to meet in those groups. And every once in a while, I'll call. Yeah, every once in a while, I'll call a grief group together, and the grief group honestly is something I want to do more of, and it's just having the interest and the bandwidth to do it. But it's like, during these stressful times,
Hang on, Jack. Hang on. The internet's lagging.
There's
You're back.
really a lot of space.
Yes. Yes. We're having a little bit of a connection issue. You there, Jack?
Mm-hmm.
I think he froze. He'll be back.
So that's like one of the highlights of.
It's all right.
Well, doing those
that's
types
good.
of
That's
activities
awesome.
they're good activities, and that's what we are. Kind of like Environmental Coffee House, we might be online, but there's a lot of us who are meeting up through the community. Collapse Chronicles, Sam is with us here in the chat, and he's not far from me, and there's other people that are mingling, and we're going to all share a lot on the East Coast. So I think that it's happening in a lot more places than we know. What do you think, Jen?
Well, I was wondering, Jack, where do you stand on the spectrum? You said you weren't really a doomer. Do you think that life on Earth is going to end, or do you think that we're just in a decline and that we're going to come back? Do let me know if you can hear me. All right.
Sandy. Love live. I love live. It's so exciting. All the scrubs.
Yeah.
But it's just the internet
Jack,
tonight
did you hear my question? Did you hear me? Can you hear us?
The internet's wonky, guys, but we've got a lot of people. We have Jeff is from Oregon is here, and they're having a conversation about Cottage Grove. All right, Jack.
He says he can't see anybody.
Oh, well, hang out, go back out, and then come back in. That's all he has to do. While we're waiting for Jack, Jennifer, why don't you give us another highlight that you might have found from the book? And, all right. Go out and back in. Oh, guys,
well,
this is just
nothing here.
Up.
It's all right.
Go back out and come in. Just click. Yeah, he'll come back. So, Jen,
just that's fine. Yeah, Jack is a grief counselor, and he's a community organizer, and he gets people together talking about their loss and their grief. Hi, Jack.
He's back. Okay, are we better now?
Yeah,
all right.
I don't know what happens, but it's
okay, hon. Let me tell you, it's the beauty of live. Everybody knows that this shit happens with the internet.
It does.
Yeah,
it does.
So nobody's surprised, especially with lousy internet like I have, because I live in rural Western New York, and my internet is even though I have a booster, it's not that great. So where were we, Jen? We were conversing.
Well, I want to actually ask, because I do see a lot of parallels between your work and Carolyn Baker's work.
She wrote the intro.
And she has done a lot of grief work. She lives very simply. She also is a very well-known author. And she also wrote the foreword to your book, I believe. Did she not?
She did.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right.
I can hear you.
Yeah, he's got a lag, that's all.
You,
She wrote a beautiful foreword.
Yes, she did. I asked her to.
Aw.
yes.
And she
Well, I
happily
was asking
obliged.
about the parallels between your work and Carolyn Baker's work, and you know how you differ from
Well,
Carolyn.
uh, I'm not quite sure how I differ from her. But I will say that we met because Guy McPherson had published an article of mine on his Nature Bat's last site. This was like, I don't know how many years ago now, 8, 9 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And Carolyn saw the article and she reached out to me. She said, "Hey, we need to talk."
Okay,
and
good.
and we just and that's
So
how we met.
you're friends. You're friends with Carolyn, then, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah, we're
That's
friends.
great.
So are we. She's awesome.
Yay.
I love her.
She is.
I love her. She always has something. If I feel like shit, she will just have something to say to me that just gets me through. I will drop her a little line on Facebook every now and then and just say, "Hey," and you know, she's a very inspirational person. We did a beautiful interview with her.
Yes, yes. And I think Carolyn is one of my mentors in the climate world. And she's been writing and grappling with it for longer than I have in a significant way. So I've looked up to her, and I asked her to write the forward because I felt like she was an elder to me and that it would be an honor to have her write the forward for me. And she
Oh,
did.
that's
And
beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah. So let's see, everybody. Anybody out there, if you have any questions for Jack, I don't know if anybody read the book, but if you haven't, please put a Q in front of it and we can ask Jack because Jack is here also to help us. Remember,
Mhm.
he's here,
Yeah.
he has a book,
I
but he's here to help us.
Yeah, I love questions. And I just want to say to anyone who's listening, the book is unique in the sense that it, it's really an emotional support guide. Can you hear me? Am I being heard? Are we
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you're
connected here?
fine. You're
You're
Okay.
fine.
beautiful.
You're
And
fine.
and so
Yeah.
so the yeah, so the book really gets into the core emotions, into depth work, and
Does.
also just how to manage stuff. And I just want to mention, like, the four pivots of the book in terms of emotional work is that it's like a field guide and a workbook for how to deal with past wounds, right? So the traumas in our past, the disappointments, the shit that's happened to us, the baggage that we carry, and how to begin to unload some of that so that our hearts can be more available to the world, so we can get more involved and connect with one another. And then the and in second place, the emotional work helps us cope with the crisis itself. So whether it's the grief or the hopelessness, the depression, the anxiety, the despair that we feel, so the emotional work helps us just cope with what's going on so we can stay afloat. And third is that the emotional work helps us not only cope but actually get involved with what's happening, right? So that it kind of relates to kind of clearing the encrustations around our hearts and becoming available, like bioavailable to the situation, so we can pay attention, right? And then the fourth way is that the more of our shadow, the more of our darkness and pain that we clear via not being hurt people that hurt others, including the planet, the less we project our own crap, and displace our own emotional violence onto the world and onto one another. So it's a book really about how to care, and that care
Mm,
is multifunctional.
That's pretty
that's
heavy.
beautiful.
It is. It
Yeah.
really is. And we
Yeah.
need
Yeah,
that.
so it's like, it helps, I think, in the sense of, there's something in it for everybody. And like doomers, people that think we have absolutely no hope. Well, a lot of those people still like want to learn how to cope and deal with stuff. So it speaks to that, and it speaks to, like, if we never get out of this climate hell, and it just goes to total shit, it's like, we will have learned, like how to go through that dying process maybe a bit more gracefully. And then,
Mm.
like no one knows what's going to happen in the future.
Right.
So that's this parenthetical discussion. But it helps us like get involved to save and to nurture and to honor and to feel and bear witness to what we can, and to do that open-heartedly and wholeheartedly.
Bear witness, which is what we are living in and through. Absolutely. It is a shit show. I mean,
Yeah,
I think it's
it is.
happening. I guess I am one of those people, but I need these things. And I particularly, I like the support that you talk about in chapter 7, um, all these emotions, guilt, but you talk about how they're helpful. Like guilt returns us to our values, morality
Mm.
and care, and fear and remorse and despair and worry and anxiety and grief. All of these things have a place, but we need to understand how to get through them.
Yeah, not only get through them, but to leverage them. So I
Okay.
like to say that, like, I focus on the emotions because, like, when we're afraid of feeling, dark or negative or difficult emotions, we shrink away. We shrink away from the issues that matter in the world, and we shrink away from ourselves.
Mhm.
And when we learn how to use the emotions for good, how to leverage them into more wholeheartedness, more passion, more interest, more community, more good stuff, it's like we can take all that difficult stuff and turn it into a win-win, right? So that we begin to be able to heal ourselves and heal the world that we're part of, instead of just shrinking away and having our heads in the sand.
I like that. I need healing.
Mhm.
I need some healing right now in my
Yeah.
life. What's happening with me and Jennifer, we talk about this. Growing things is healing me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Is that how you felt about your garden and your farm, Jack? It was kind of a healing experience to put
Oh
the
yeah.
plants.
Yeah. I mean, that was my therapy, I mean, when I was out
Me
there, that
too.
was like the best. Like, I mean, there's an ineffable joy about watching things grow, and watch grow
There
that
is.
you yourself participate in, right? And nurture along, and just the physical labor of it. So, like it kept me in shape, and, you're outdoors, and, there's just so many ways that being growing food. I just made a Facebook post like last week, and I just rattled off like 11 of the top ways that growing food helps us in profound, uh, irreplaceable ways. So
It
like
Mhm.
just
does.
growing a garden is incredibly healing, and not only personally but collectively. If only because what inspired that post was I got so, I just had a breaking point of like getting sick of the stupid stickers that we get on our food. Like, even if you buy organic food or whatever, like there's so much plastic on the food and stickers on the food, and I hate those
Yep.
stickers. And yeah, so anyway, it was like a sticker revolt post, and I sort of, elaborated it to other ways.
Uh, uh,
We do have a lot of questions.
yeah, let's go
Yeah,
for it.
I'm
let's
getting
bring them
them.
on.
Yeah. All right. Well, I do want to bring up one comment. Goran, what a wonderful person. He's so supportive to us. To feel good in the
Mm.
apocalypse is to have your head in the sand. Well, but you got to have a daily feel good about something, right? He knows that.
Yeah,
I mean, we can't walk around always miserable. No. But
yeah.
anyway,
So can I speak to that?
absolutely.
That brings up a part of the book that I kind of highlighted to Jennifer and to you that I thought would be cool to talk about, which I mentioned at the beginning of the show when I said, like, let's talk about that. And there's a
Yep.
part in the book, and I put it in the anxiety chapter, and it's titled, Navigating the Doom and Denial of the Climate Crisis. And so, like, I don't get along with doomers great, because I nobody, this is how I summarize it, like, nobody knows the precise design of the future. Okay, and in that subsection, that navigating the doom and denial, I talk about like getting nitty gritty. So instead of a polarized stance, right? So we have like people who think that there's absolutely no hope for the future and that we are destined for total apocalypse. And then you have people who don't even acknowledge the reality of climate change. And it's like, where's something in the middle? And I'm not saying let's go into something in the middle like to feel good. I'm talking about reality, right? So what I say in the book is that maybe, in this section, maybe we're at like a 9.2 of severity, like really breaking it down so that we don't get into black and white thinking, right? And what I notice is that people who have no hope for the future hate positive news, right? So they deny positive news, and people who are in denial of the climate crisis deny any of the bad news. So both extremes have this kind of denial going on. So if you go into like some of the near-term human extinction groups on Facebook, it's like you're not allowed to say positive things, and if you do, you probably get kicked out. And so I didn't do very well in those groups because I was always challenging the people, which is most of them, who like have no hope for the future. And listen, hope is also like well, I have hope or I don't have hope. Okay, it's like hope has to be nuanced, right? And this is some of the integration work of being able to think in nuances and grays instead of black or white terms. And I do say in that section that, that to be fair, the doomers have it more right than the people who are in denial. Like, we are in for some even worse times. And that is basically scientifically guaranteed. But to what degree, we don't really know specifically. And so that's what I want to say. It's so back to the question or the comment, how do you have hope in the apocalypse? Well, by rearranging your thinking and not being so black and white, and being realistic in the sense that we don't know exactly where we're going.
Okay. Well, that's a fair assessment. That is definitely. Well, Goran came back and said hope is wishful thinking. Well, I understand,
Oh,
Jack.
yes.
But go ahead. Answer.
Yeah. Thank you. So there's a little piece to that. So another term so we all know the term hopium, right? Hopium is like false hope. So I introduced a term called reverse hopium. And reverse hopium is what doomers exhibit, right? So that they don't have any hope, and they reject all positive things that might be promising for the future in a display of reverse hopium. So it's the extremism that there's denial on both sides. One is hopium, the other is reverse hopium. And so, having a degree of hope is realistic. Having a greater degree of doomerism is also realistic.
Yeah, I see how you're bringing it though to the middle. Jennifer, what do you think of that
Well,
one?
it's not even the middle. It's like if this is our if this is our spectrum, like
Yeah.
like we're like here, like we're at the edge of the cliff, right? Or and some people say, oh, we're already
Okay.
flying off the cliff when we've already hit the bottom. It's like, who knows? We don't know that.
Right. I tend to agree as far as that goes. I mean, I don't know, Jen. Where are you at on
Well,
this
I
one?
think that whenever you polarize really hard one way or the other, whether you go ultra, uber, conservative, ostrich head in the sand, or if you go full on doomer, as long as you're filtering your input through your polarization, then you're not going to get the accurate, unfiltered picture of reality. So the challenge then becomes to take reality as it comes to you and not try and put it into one box or another box, but just see what
Yes.
is and to be what is.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think that's really awesome and accurate. And it brings up another thing I just want to speak to. And that's what I do is I like break down, where we are, in terms of like the apocalypse on like 0 to 10, and I'm at like 9 to 10, like that's where we are. And So in trying to be realistic, right, instead of saying, oh, it's just bad, or we have a it's apocalyptic. Well, to what degree, right? We have to have some kind of
Yes.
nuance in there. And Jennifer, what you brought up, triggers this other concept that I want to share that's in that same section. And I kind of had this epiphany one day, and I don't know if it's true, but I put it in there as a possibility that so the emotion of fear is a polarizing emotion because it's a fight or flight reaction, right? You either fight or flight, and that's a polarized thing. So during fear, and we see it during the pandemic in our public discussions, there's all this polarization right now. And so I said, is it possible that we have doomers or denialists, and we have that polarization because each of those extremes to mitigate fear and anxiety, right? It's like the people who are doomers just want to be absolutely sure that there's no, and the people who are in denial want to be absolutely sure that there's no issue with the climate crisis. And what if it's that the people who polarize that much do so as an unconscious way to mitigate and to cope with anxiety? And what if we don't know? What if we don't know exactly? What if we know somewhat that, yeah, the future is going to be pretty damn difficult, but we don't know the precise design of the future? Then we have to hang out with some of the unknown. And I think that's really disturbing to people, right? That's disturbing to people. And so learning how to befriend anxiety and unknowing is important because it helps us be more realistic. If indeed anxiety is causing us to polarize and to see the world and to see our future unrealistically, learning how to tolerate fear and anxiety allows us to be more realistic about where we're at because we're not coming to an emotional conclusion about where we're at.
Okay. An emotional conclusion.
It's called
Deep
emotional
breath.
reasoning, right? It's
Yeah.
coming to a logical conclusion based on the impact or the strength of emotion. And it can be totally inaccurate, so that emotions often, when they're extreme, especially fear and anxiety, don't give us a realistic picture of what's actually happening in the world.
And politically, that's true. Politically, that's
Yeah.
completely true. Well, let's see
Yeah.
here. We've got some. Okay. How does. Now, this is a 360. How does Jack feel about Fukushima to Chernobyl, which is now in lava state and increasing, and radioactivity? Jack, how do you feel about.
I don't have a lot of feelings about it because honestly, from the research that I did when Fukushima was bad and in the couple years after, I came away with that, like, I didn't have a real sense of what was going on. And, I looked at fish contamination levels and they weren't uh, dangerous. And I just did not get the data. I wasn't convinced that it was a problem. And it may be I'm just a bit ignorant if I'm not on page with the reality about that. So I don't really have much to say about that, to be honest.
Okay. Let me
Except
see.
that it's like it was a horrible event, and if it's still affecting, whatever it is, it's like that's an issue. But it's just not really on my radar.
Okay. Uh, let's see. Oh, Jack, do you practice Qigong? We have a very experienced Qigong practitioner in the audience, and he just thought maybe you did.
I do.
Oh boy. Now that there it goes.
So how
Void
did he
is-
know that?
Yeah. How did you
How
know
did he
it?
know that?
Ooh.
Well,
Did
may
he
not
read
have
his
known it. He was
bio,
just
or
asking.
is this like a secret psychic connection?
I think it's a secret psychic connection. I watch Void's videos. So, Jack, tell us about Qigong. Enlighten us.
Oh, Well, I don't know what to say. If there's a specific question about it, I'm happy to answer it. But it's just a cultivation practice. So I use it to relax. I use it to center. I use it to ground. I use it for inspiration and creativity. I use it to stay in shape. And I practiced Tai Chi for many, many years, and Tai Chi is actually a form of Qigong. And I was a pretty serious yogi, like for 5 hours a day for many years. So this stuff is just kind of like in me. So when I'm at the post office, I'll like squat in line and just do like breathing practice. Um, so I do like my yoga, my qigong often just, in the course of a day, just out in public. And I like the idea of like stretching in public and in places where you're like not supposed to be stretching, because I feel that's just part of yeah, it's like being an advertisement for sanity, that we just walk around, we're supposed to, just hold all the stress in our bodies. So anyway, that's that's what I have to say. Most of my like actual focused qigong practice I do each morning, and it's a practice that I developed. It's a unique practice that incorporates a lot of different modalities that I've learned over the years, and I actually developed it. It's called the Nourish practice. It's at my website. It's a whole audio series, and it's also a template for doing grief work, because it's so somatic. But that's like a different series. So the first series is really just stress reducing, centering, grounding. And I developed that practice actually because when I was building my house and I was working like 16 hours a day, 17 hours a day for months on end, and I had no time or energy to do anything else. And I developed this practice from that because I was so exhausted. So it was just like a deep, nourishing and nurturing practice. And I just did it this morning for like an hour after being on the road.
Oh, that's great.
Lovely.
It's good to have a practice like that. Keeps you healthy too.
Kate says the best Qigong practice is the one that you do. So there are
There you
more
go.
in the audience. That's really cool that there, you're right, Jennifer. There's like a psychic connection. I like that. All right, let's see here. Okay, Hunter says, has Extinction Rebellion been making an effort on policies from your Prime Minister clown at Environmental Coffee House? Okay, they're talking. Hunter. You're in New Zealand, so where are you talking about? Has Extinction been making an effect on? Okay, have they been making an effect? Let's just generalize it. Have they been making an effect anywhere? I know they have in the UK because Gail was arrested for breaking some glass. Can you speak to Extinction Rebellion a little bit?
Who, me?
Yeah.
In what sense? I didn't even understand the question. I don't know who he's
Well,
talking about.
he's from New. Maybe all right. Let's talk about Extinction Rebellion anyway. Since he brought the question up, are they being effective, and do you feel like there's any effective aspect of what you've started with the organization?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's it's a good example again to think in grayscale, right, instead of black or white. I mean, of course, Extinction Rebellion has done some good. They've raised a lot of awareness about the climate crisis, and I think one thing that's important is that we act like we're in a crisis, right? And so that's one of those cognitive biases, is that if everybody walks around like nothing's wrong, then nobody really gets alarmed. But if we act like we're in a crisis and we talk about it and we bring it up, we even show emotion about it, then it's like hey, there's a problem here, and we're wired that way. So yes, Extinction Rebellion has done a lot of good, I think. And in our town, what we first really rallied for was getting climate emergency declared. And so we kind of hammered at city council for a number of months, and they declared climate emergency. And since then, a lot of people kind of fell away from Extinction Rebellion. So we've almost gone extinct here in Ojai. And then COVID almost made us go extinct. And so we're a bit dispersed right now, but I kind of took it upon myself to just my own direct visit with city council and with the climate emergency committee that was appointed by the city council. So yeah, and I think I mentioned this in the book, one of the really awesome experiences that actually one of the best experiences of my life, I'd have to say, is working with the youth here in Ojai. So there was like the September 21st or September 20th, global climate strike, youth climate strike. And there were hundreds of youth out in the streets, and we worked hard to
That's
promote
great.
that. And it was so awesome. That the youth, mostly high schoolers, would come to the Extinction Rebellion meeting. And that was like the flourishing of XR here. And I would love for that to happen again. And I've tried so hard to get the youth back, and but they're busy with all their other stuff. But there was a time when the youth were coming, and we had youth representatives from each school that were like mover and shakers, like little Greta Thunbergs, and that was great. And we had hundreds of people out on the streets, and that was just an ecstatic experience. And I just have a love for children and for youth, and really supporting them, and that just like grows my heart a lot. So that was like the best experience.
That's
Oh, that's
beautiful.
lovely. Lovely. We have a couple.
Well, the youth are going to
more.
need more support than anybody else, Jack.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
they're the
I know
ones that
that,
are
and
going to
I'm here
really.
for them, and I've let them know. I know. I reach out to them, and I just gently invite them to the meetings, and they just honestly haven't shown up. It's been disappointing, but at the same time, it's like I don't like judge them or have a grudge, and in part, like those youth strikes were as wonderful as they were, and maybe they were also part wonderful because I felt grief about it too. So like I'd see them out there, and it was like great to support them, but that's sad that they had to be out there, right? And it's sad that our children have to be out there on the streets and dealing with the crisis in such a head-on way. So as I look at it, it's like yin and yang. So that grief, through that, in the beauty of celebrating them and empowering them, was like a dual sort of feedback loop that really made it potent and awesome.
Wow. Well, we have a question from Dee Dee. Now you covered this about the doomerism, but I'll ask the question. Jim Massa, who is an oceanographer that is on our channel and has a channel called Science Talk with Jim Massa, he recently talked about the 2 degrees Celsius being hit. What is your opinion on doomerism, which I think you already talked about, but do you think tipping points have been reached and we can't come back from that? Thanks, Dee Dee.
Well, let's talk about the 2 degrees. Wait, what?
Yeah, 2 degrees. Go ahead.
Wait. Wait. Okay, so this might be touching on something that I think is really important, especially in the kind of doomer community. So what is this that we've hit 2 degrees already? Is that what he's saying?
Well, yeah, Jim, it's Dee Dee, and she said Jim, our oceanographer, Science Talk with Jim Massa, said recently talked about 2C being hit. What is your opinion on doomerism, and do you think the tipping points have been reached that we can't come back from? Uh-oh. Opportune time. Have we reached? Well, so we're going on an hour. Have we reached the tipping points? Doom.
And then,
okay, I think that one gets the environmental coffee house flush of the day.
oh yes, indeed.
Oh yeah,
indeed.
No, we've been trying really hard with this interview, but
we have tried so hard.
Yeah. Okay, Jack's back. We're here. Jack is back. Jack, you're back, Jack. Hello. We don't know what happened, but you're back because we are actually at the hour mark, past an hour. And we had the question. All right, just how about this? Do you think the tipping points have been reached, Jack? Hmm. I have this feeling that our internet tipping point is being reached.
All right. Can you hear me again?
I do too.
Yeah. Well, Scott said
Can you hear me?
we've passed the flushing point. All right. Yes, we can hear you now. And
Oh,
let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Back with
we
you?
can hear you.
yes,
We can hear you.
yes.
Yep.
Am I back?
Yes, you're back, hon. You're back.
Okay, so off. Just so the last thing I heard was I was just confirming that you were reading what this her oceanographer friend or whatever said we were already at 2C. Is that accurate? Did I hear
Well,
that
that we're
correctly?
approaching it. I don't know if he said it specifically. We are there, and somebody just said we're at the
Okay.
1.5. So it was 4. So, but
Yeah.
what are your thoughts
Okay.
about the
I
tipping
think
point?
it's academic, whether it's
Yeah,
2C, whether it's
yeah, exactly,
1.5.
Jen.
Who
No, it's
cares? These
important,
are
but it's really
numbers.
important. No, it's really important actually. I
Okay.
think it's very important to know where we're at in that. And it brings up to me a really important point which I've tried to get across and which I don't think has been heard. And I just put it out there for consideration. So there are a lot of people, especially in the doomer community, that say, "Oh, we're already at 1.5, or we're already at 2," or what they're using is their date for when the industrial age actually began, right? So it's like further than the conventional point as that degrees began to start to be measured officially.
Mm-hmm.
Heard right now? Am I on?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What's
Yeah,
happening?
please continue.
So what's happening is that there's sort of an official. Okay, there's an official accepted starting point for when the schedule of how many tenths of a degree Celsius we've gone over the pre-industrial age, right? From 0 to, well, it's like 1.1 right now, like coming on 1.2. I think that's where we're at officially. But then there are these people that want to say, especially the doomers that want to say, and I don't think it's honest. It's like, let's push it up to 1.5 or 2 by going back further, like 100 years. And the problem with that is that the predictions, the IPCC forecasts, as conservative as they are, another subject that's discussed in the book, is that the scientific community has gotten the framework around a certain starting point. So if you want to start like 100 years earlier and say, oh, the Industrial Revolution actually started then, we're actually higher, it's like, then you have to change, you have to talk to the whole scientific community and get them to accept a different starting point so that everyone's speaking on a on a level playing field of when that began. So you can't take the predictions that are happening now and say, oh, the predictions now are just a bunch of bullshit because we're actually much further along. It's like, no, they've arbitrarily gone, to a different starting point when the, the rest of the body of the context of the climate information is not on board with that. And do you see what I mean? It has to be commensurate. Does that make sense? I try to explain that. It's hard to explain, but it's not accurate to start earlier in the industrial, like time frame and say, oh, we're actually, at 1.5 or 2 or whatever you want to say we're at right now, because it's a different starting point that the rest of the body of knowledge is not at. It's always so hard to discuss that, but I hope it makes sense.
Jen, I'm going to give you that one.
What one?
Just to comment on
Well,
the
I
because you
mean,
have a way of wrapping it
I just,
beautiful.
I mean, okay, let's talk about technicalities. We started the Industrial Revolution of 1850. Let's just say that's our baseline. And then however much we've warmed from 1850 until now, that's 170 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. But I think regardless of what the temperature is, what matters is the trends. What are the trends? What are the tipping points? Where are we going? What's the shape of the graph? How does it look? Because it's sure not going to start going up like this and then like stop and go down like that. I've never seen that yet. So I think really it's a matter of whether you believe tipping points have been crossed yet or not, and what your definition of the repercussions of that is. So where do you stand with that, Jack? Do you think the tipping points have been crossed ecologically? Do you think that we're in...
So I think, I'm not a climate scientist, so I can only go by, I try to listen to the people that reports and the science that I think is reliable, and then, see if there's a consensus about that. And I think it's all over the place. I don't think that there's a stable knowledge or reckoning as to which tipping points have been reached and not reached, and crossed and not crossed, and what's irretrievable and what's recoverable. I just don't case. And so think that to be realistic, right, and back to 9 point blah 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 or whatever, so it's not a polarized thought, it's like, yeah, we've probably crossed some tipping points. Like, that's probable. How many? Who knows, right? And they're all interwoven, right? So all the feedback loops. And so I don't know where it's all at. I don't know if there's any scientist that knows where all that's at. I think people might pretend to know where that all is, but I don't think it's been determined.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to say,
good.
guys, at the... Oh, go ahead.
We're tying it up right now, Jack. Just letting you know that's
fine. And just, and this is a tie-up. It's just, we're in deep shit. So we are in deep, deep shit. So if that's, suffices without, without like trying to pinpoint what I don't think we know, then that's where I leave it.
There you go. Well, we have been on... Despite our various problems, it's been a good show. 1 hour and 14 minutes. And Trish is with us. Hi, Trish Kaiser. Listen, guys, I really want to...
Trish is my Irish sister. I have to tell you, Trish is my Irish sister. She is. No, and this is not even a joke.
She says, go talk to Kevin Hester.
Our grandparents both come from Hester. County Kerry. That's
actually,
what it is.
Kevin Hester is the
one
that
Kerry
I tried to...
girls.
Kevin Hester is the one I tried to explain this whole thing to, and he couldn't digest what I was saying. I don't think Kevin Hester is a very honest person when it comes to the climate crisis. He's a wonderful guy. I've talked to him personally and stuff, but I just think that he's not accurate.
Well, you could say this is your show, how you feel, and that is
my opinion.
He's a friend of our show, but that is... Hey, Poetry of Predicament. He's
Dean.
Hi, Dean. Paul Beckwith has a great habit of articulating the difference in cumulative temperature rise between 1750 and 1850. He calls that difference, point
plus 3C.
But there's a point there. If from 1750, so it's
okay. So that's right.
Exactly.
If you define the Industrial Revolution as starting at 1750, then it's 3 degrees, and it just depends where you start. But the point of it is, after not budging for 10,000 years since the end of the last ice age, we are now quickly going up, and that's the point. That's
correct.
The point. That's the trend, and we're not going back down. So,
and that point
that's what
3,
we have to look forward to. Yeah.
That point 3 is exactly what I was talking about. It's like tacking that on. So if you tack that on, then you have to let the whole scientific community know. You have to let the IPCC know, and so that they can rearrange all their predictions and all their context to fit that context. So it's like apples and oranges.
Oh, apples and oranges. Boy, I'm hungry. I worked
'Cause
all day.
The IPCC is saying if we get to 1.5, we're screwed. If we get to 2, we're really screwed. But their 1.5 is different. They're not starting at 1750. So if you want to start at 1750, you have to go to the IPCC and say, okay, now what do you think? If we start then, so it's not. Again, I tried to explain it. I hope it's been communicated.
The trend is not
Thank
your
you
friend.
thank you
The
for
trend is
having
not
me.
your
I really
friend.
appreciate it.
It's been a
Oh,
pleasure, Jack.
for-
Thank
It
you
has
so
been
much
a
for
pleasure.
dropping
the
by.
book is a beautiful book. It's got
It
so
is. It's a
many
beautiful
things
book.
to digest in it, and we appreciate having you with us. It's been a long time coming.
It has
We're gonna
been.
Yeah, it has been. But thank you, everybody out there. We will, hopefully, we'll be back Friday night. See what goes on during the week. It's the time, Jack, we have a project going where everybody that our followers are sending us their gardening videos and pictures from around the world, and I'm compiling a trilogy of everybody's gardens in our little community, our little lovely.
Oh, awesome.
And yeah, I mean, we do have some positive things happening. And like Kim says, our moderator, thank you, Kim, and I love this family we have created. And we have one here. So everybody, thanks for being part of our family, bringing you the diversity of voices. And we love you too. We absolutely love you too. Well, thank you all. And I am going to end. Peace out, guys.